This episode of Let's Talk About Brand was initially broadcast as a live stream in 2021. It has been edited from its original format.
Hey everyone, I'm Christine Gritman, and I am here every week with Let's Talk About Brand, this show that I do every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time, where we talk about branding and with fabulous live guests. Today, I'm really excited about our guest. It's someone who I have admired for a very long time. And while I don't technically know him, I do like him and I do trust him. So we're going to talk about know, like, and trust and your brand with the fabulous Mr. Bob Burg. Without any further ado, I am very excited to bring on Mr. Bob Burg to talk to us about know, like, and trust. Hello, Bob. How are you?
Hello. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. What a lovely audience.
I hope we get an awesome audience in the comments, too. I would love for you to just tell the good people at home first a little bit about you and what you do and what they should know, besides the fact that you have brought one of my favorite quotes out of your head.
Thank you. Former broadcaster turned sales professional, turned sales manager, turned speaker on the topic of sales. And so there's a kind of a theme there. Though, you know, as part of sales, it's really about influence. It's really about being able to bring value to those who would be your customers and clients. And you know, it's a nice thing to, you know, to be able to do, that you can feel that you can share product and services that add value to people's lives.
Now, you mentioned a couple of really key words there that I would love to kind of dig into how you define them. One of them is influence, and one of them is value. Can you just talk for a moment about how you're personally defining each of those things?
Yes, and boy, I'll tell you what, you are so right on the mark and so sharp. Those are two very important words, and I think it's very important with both of them that we do define them, because they each are very overused words, and each sort of come with they're the kind of words that 10 people can see and 10 people define them differently. So let's begin with influence, and let me give you my definition just so that we're all facing the same direction. On a very, very basic level, influence can be defined simply as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That, by definition, that's influence. Now, that's its definition, but it is not its essence. Okay, the essence of influence is pull as opposed to push, as in the old saying, how far can you push a rope? And the answer, of course, is not very far or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't push, right? They don't push their will on others. They don't push their ideas on others. They don't push themselves on others. They're not push-y. Right? You never hear people say, wow, that David or that Susan, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, she's influential. She has a lot of pull with people, because that's what influence is. It's pull. It's an attraction. We pull people toward us. Now, if we're going to say, how do we do that? Well, that's the key. And this is done through your focus on other people. We want to be internally motivated, but externally focused. We understand that, as Dale Carnegie told us, that how to win friends and influence people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. I often say when speaking at sales conferences, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Yep.
Right? And they're not going to follow you. If you're a leader, they're not going to follow you because you want to achieve a certain goal. So the great influencers, the genuine influencers, they ask themselves questions first to make sure they're facing the right way. How does what I'm asking this person to do, Christine, align with their goals, align with their wants, their needs, their desires? How does what I'm asking this other person to do, how does it align with their values? How am I helping them accomplish what they want, overcome certain problems, get to where they want in life? And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully and intelligently and genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment, as opposed to trying to depend on some type of compliance. As my great friend, my dear friend Dondi Scumaci, she's a wonderful leadership teacher and author, and she says, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to influence, compliance will never take you where commitment can go. So that's basically influence.
That is an incredible gem right there. Compliance. Compliance is not what you want. What you want is commitment. What you don't want is, oh, fine. What you want is, heck yeah.
Right. Wow. Well, you just said it beautifully. Combining you and Dondi, two, great leaders and two great thoughts.
So to launch right into the main premise of today's show, everyone has heard about three of the most important words in relationship marketing, really, which is know, like, and trust. And people have kind of put them into their own configurations. I've heard it quoted differently, but the main one comes from your book, Endless Referrals, which is, all things being equal, people will choose to do business with and refer business to people who they know, like, and trust. So I would love for you to define for us what you meant by know, what you meant by like, and what you meant by trust.
Sure. And it also, what I think is important within that, and what separates it, if you will, is the beginning part that says all things being equal. Because a lot of times people will say, I'll read people say, and they'll kind of quote me by saying, people do business with those they know, like, and trust. Well, yeah, but that's not a complete story.
You can't suck.
Yeah,
if you suck at what you do, people knowing you does not help. But then again, you're not going to get the trust factor either in that case.
Right. And you may also not have the deliverable that they need. So they may need the widget in 10 days. And you can't get it to them in 10 days. And your competitor, who is close to, quality that you are, but has, whatever, it's always a matter of looking at the whole picture. They may know, love, and trust you, and they may still, feel good about that person. Well, they're going to get the business in this case. I mean, you've got to be able to deliver. You've got to be able to scale. You've got to be able to be good at what there's a whole, so the all things being equal, you could say, or close enough to equal.
Yeah.
And I think about how, when I was a little kid, we had a dentist that was 5 miles down the road, and my family loved him, Dr. Vonsalides, Dr. V, in Massachusetts. And when we moved, when I was about 5 years old, about 50-60 minutes down away, we still went to him because we loved him. My family loved him. And so all things were at least close enough to equal, right? But when I moved to Florida, it didn't matter how much I knew, liked, and trusted him. I wasn't going to make the commute to go to the dentist. You know what I'm saying? So things need to be close enough to equal for this to be true. Okay.
So
now
you bring up another excellent point, though, which is that it was one thing for you to go to him when he was 5 minutes away, but you guys made that hour trip to still go to him. So that really plays into the trust, which begets loyalty. I think that that's also a really key point there, because things were close enough to equal. They weren't fully equal. I'm sure there were dentists in your new town.
Absolutely. And who would have been wonderful, but they were close enough to equul. Yeah. So we say all things being equal or close enough to equal, but we just say all things being equal because it's a little more alliterative. So now let's go into know, like, and trust. Do people have to know you or know of you? Well, sure, of course they do. Otherwise, they can't do business with you if they don't either know you or know of you. Likability is so important. Okay, now, do they have to like you? If you're the only game in town and they have no other choice, no, they don't have to like you. But the chances are you're not the only game in town.
Nope.
and uh, and they don't have to do business with you. And you probably should be pretty likable if you want to increase the odds. Now, hopefully, you're genuinely likable. But fortunately, it's something you can work on. Tim Sanders years ago wrote The Likability Factor, which was an excellent, excellent book, which I highly recommend. But so yeah, like is very important.
Though I'd also
And
point out, you said they should like you. We should also be aware of who the they is, because the they isn't everybody. The they is the people who are actually going to buy from you or who you want to buy from you, right?
exactly, very, very important. So the no and the like, yeah, very important. Trust, well, you can't say the most important because it's all important, but trust is really where it's at these days. That's the big differentiator. And first of all, when we talk in terms of trust, and I love what Stephen M.R. Covey, who was the son of Dr. Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen M.R. Covey is also quite brilliant, the son, and he wrote a book years ago called The Speed of Trust. And as he says, trust is the one thing that changes everything. Because when there's trust, when there's high trust, things happen quickly. Things happen smoothly, right? When there's no trust, low trust, lack of trust, that's when the works begin to get gummed up. That's when red tape steps in. That's when committees and more meetings and so forth. And so, but when he talks in terms of trust, what I loved was when he said, that covers 2 areas. There's competence, which is ability, right? And there's also character. So it's very important when we talk about trust, know, like, and trust. That trust is in terms of competence and character. They have to be able to do the job well, and we have to trust their character in doing so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just so very vital.
Now, one thing that I'm curious about, you mentioned the book, The Speed of Trust, and I actually do want to check that out. But speed is something that I want to talk about, which is everyone wants to get that know, like, and trust factor, ideally, because that's what leads to people buying from you. A lot of people, say it can take years to build up know, like, and trust. But there are best practices that can lead to becoming more known, that can lead to becoming well liked by the right people, and that can lead to people trusting you. So I'd kind of love your insights in terms of what you've seen in your experience in some things that tend to foster gaining all 3 of those virtues, I guess.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's a great point, and I don't think it needs to take years. Can it? Well, sure, but I don't think it needs to. I think it's actually a much quicker process if you do things correctly. And I think what really it's about is how much can you genuinely and authentically focus on that other person, and it begins with an initial conversation. And in that conversation with someone, how interested are you in them as opposed to trying to make them interested in you? So are you asking them questions that show genuinely and authentically that you want to learn about them, that you want to make an investment in their success? This can be as easy as asking questions of this person, such as, how did you get started in your business? And then listening to them. That's not how did you get started in the so-and-so business isn't a particularly clever question. It's not a slick question, but it's a very powerful question, because you're basically asking that person to be the star. You're asking them to share with you their movie. And most people are not asked that question, and they enjoy answering that question. Following up with, what do you enjoy most about what you do? Which may sound more like, wow, you must have had some fascinating experiences over the years. What do you enjoy most about your work? And again, what that is, I call this a feel-good question. It's not intrusive, it's not invasive, it's not prospecty, it's not, but it really kind of reaches into their heart, and it's asking them to share their joy. What do they enjoy most about what they do? But I'll tell you, one of the best questions that you can really ever ask someone, and I call this the one key question that will distinguish you from the rest, is to ask, and let's for a moment just that this person is in sales, and it's to ask this person, Dave or Mary, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good prospective customer for you? And so when you've asked that question, you've really again demonstrated through what you've said and through your attitude that you're looking to invest in them and their interest. By the way, if they're not in sales per se, it could simply be, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is someone you'd like to meet? Or how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good connection for you?
Or even what's a good opportunity to bring to you or to send your way?
Yeah, and a good way to lead into that question is also to say, Mary or Dave, I always love connecting good people with other good people. Tell me, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is, someone you'd like to meet or whatever it would happen to be? So, those kinds. So and then after that, we send a personalized handwritten letter to that person, a personal handwritten note of thanks. And it's on a regular, a note card. It's not a postcard. It's sent within an envelope, but it simply says, it's short and sweet. It's Dear Dave or Dear Mary, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. Enjoyed speaking with you about so and so. So if I can ever refer business your way, I certainly will. Or whatever it happens to be. Put it in a regular envelope. Handwrite it. Put a stamp on it. Send it out. What a way to distinguish yourself from everyone else. And of course, connect with them on social media. But that handwritten note will be something that they keep and they remember. And then, always look for ways to bring. Now, as you do this doesn't take years. This takes days. It takes weeks. Maybe it takes months, but it doesn't have to take years. But, the key is just always asking yourself, how do I bring back? And remember, when we say all things being equal, people do business with, refer to those people they know, like, and trust. It's not they'll do business with and refer business to those computers they know, like, and trust. It's not the medium and it's not the platform that elicits the know, like, and trust. It's how you utilize it to create that.
And those handwritten notes and those personal touches and even those genuine, generous offers, those are ways to ultimately brand yourself in people's heads as someone who is in it for the other person's benefit as well, to brand yourself in your head as someone who makes them feel heard, as someone who makes them feel like they've got their eye out for you.
Exactly. Perfect.
Oh, that's beautiful. To that end, actually, we have a question from our Tuesday chat from Shruti. She wants to know, how can brands, not just people, brands, build the authentic giver attitude across the board?
Hi, Shruti, and it's a great question. And I go back to it being that a brand is comprised of a person or a group of people. So it's always the people behind it that make the brand. Now, even if it's the brand itself, the name of it, who that has the brand, it's the people who create it. It's the people behind it who actually do the action. So I think really, and it's not a long answer at all, it's how do you connect with people on a heart-to-heart level? How do you connect with people, again, regardless of the medium itself, though utilizing every medium you can to be able to make this connection? How do you do so in a way that makes that customer feel good about themselves, about your company, about your brand, about you? And I think as long as you have that in mind, that's when it's going to happen. There's no real, I don't think, magic behind it. It's just really asking yourself this question: is how I respond to this person, is what I put out there, is it adding value to their lives? And value can very often just mean they feel good about themselves.
Oh, I love it. We've got some more questions from our Tuesday Chat About Brand Twitter chat for you, and I invite anyone watching us live to also give us their questions for Bob as well. But Micah would love to know an interesting story based on your work and belief in giving to get that led to something completely unexpected.
Well, sometimes these things do have unexpected returns. So, a lot of times they don't, though. And I want to answer your excellent question in a moment. But first, I want to make sure people understand that there's nothing about this that is magical or mystical. Okay, when you think about being a go-giver, what does it really mean? It simply means you're shifting your focus off of yourself and onto others, right? Instead of focusing on what you get or what you receive, you're focusing on providing immense value to others. Now, not only is this a more fulfilling way of doing business, it's actually the most profitable way of doing business, but not for any way out woo-woo or magical, mystical reasons. It actually makes very logical, rational sense. When you're that person, okay, that human being, that brand, who is able to move off of a self focus and onto a focus on making that other person's life better, right? However, they would see it as being, they feel good about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to see you succeed. They want to be a part of your life, a part of your business, and they'll often be your personal walking ambassador. So it's actually predictable. I mean, we never know who is going to be the prospect, the customer or client. We can never know that. That's why we don't want to be attached to the outcome, right? We want to do the work. We want to make those connections. We want to create immense value for as many people as possible. But we never know exactly where it's going to come back. But that doesn't mean it's a surprise when it does. We know it is going to come back. Now, let me answer the question, though, about something really being a surprise. We call this the law of left field. And, it's sort of when, you receive a great referral, let's say, and they you ask who referred you, and they say the name. You don't even recognize the name, right? Where did that come from, right? Or some incalculably valuable thing just comes your way. And we say, wow, that one came right out of left field, right? And but here's the interesting thing. We can probably backtrack that if we could possibly, and see where we have touched someone's life in a certain way, and somehow that led, but are there times it's happened? Sure. When we receive calls from someone to do, to do something, and they heard about us from somewhere or from someone. But I remember years ago, many years ago, where but it's still one of my favorite stories, where a person I had actually referred some business to, and I had and so forth, and I later found out that a client, and I have to parse this together a little bit in order to edit and so forth, because it happened a long time ago and I don't want to drag it out, but I was trying to connect with a client who was having a very difficult time. Somebody happened to mention to me that this particular person I'd referred some business to, that they're actually a client of his. And so I called him, and I didn't ask him for a direct referral, because I didn't know if that was going to be appropriate or not based on his relationship with them. But I did ask him for just some advice on how I might go about not even getting in the door, but just finding the door, right? And he said, nonsense. I will call them and have them call you, right? And the next day they called me. The decision maker called me. He said, hey, my friend so-and-so told me I've got to call you, got to use you. And I ended up doing a lot of business with that company. It's when you put yourself out there and provide value for others, not because of what you're going to get from it, but because it's part of you that you want to give value to others. So often these things happen. And again, I want to make sure people, it's not magical, and it's not, some selfless, self-sacrificial thing. And no, it's who you are. And because it's who you are, it's what you do. And the way life happens, the more people whose lives you bring value to, as they understand value, not what you think is of value, but as they understand value, the more these things are going to happen.
That is beautiful. So we have one more final question that we're going to sneak in there. Tim would love to know, if you had to add a fourth word to know, like, and trust, what would that word be and why?
Thank you, Tim. Great question again. Here's the thing. I think those three words encompass what needs to be encompassed for that to work. Now, if there was one I would add, and then let me put the disclaimer to it. If there was one I would add, it would be respect. Okay, know, like, trust, and respect. But I think respect is sort of a subcategory of trust, because if you trust that person's character and you trust that person's competence, the chances are really good that you respect them. So I would be tempted to kind of say that the know, like, and trust is kind of a complete thought in itself. On the other hand, I've been wrong in life far too often to ever close my mind to alternatives. So, Tim, I hope that answered the question, if not satisfactorily, then hopefully in a way that maybe just spurred another idea for you.
Tim is satisfied. I had actually theorized that the fourth word might be delight, simply because I'm thinking of it in terms of the sales funnel or flywheel or whatever it is, because they have to know you, they have to like you, they have to trust you, but then once they trust you, so I'm putting delight in there. All right, so Bob, tell everyone at home where they should find you. You're in a lot of places, you do a lot of great stuff, so where should they be checking you out?
Probably the best place is Burg, BURG.com. And just feel welcome to explore the site. There's a lot of goodies there and resources. So go on and hang around for a while, Burg.com.
Fantastic. And Tim Sohn says hi, by the way. I know that you've been on his show, the Tim and Jim Show.
Tim's awesome, absolutely.
Tim Sohn and Jim Fuse, very good friends of mine. Well, thank you so much for being on, Bob. This was really exciting. I've admired you for so long, and I'm still going to get that tattoo of know, like, trust somewhere.
Well, if anyone would wear it well, my friend, it would be you.
Just got to figure out a nice classy spot,
Yeah.
So again, I do this show every single Friday at 12 noon, and I thank all of you for joining me today with the wonderful Bob Burg, and I thank all of you who I will see on Tuesday. Bye. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About Brand, part of the Adweek Podcast Network and Acast Creator Network. This podcast was produced by Christine Gritman, executive produced by Al Manarino and John Heil, and edited by Christine Gritman. You can listen and subscribe to all of Adweek's podcasts by visiting adweek.com/podcasts. Stay updated on all things Adweek Podcast Network by following us on Twitter at Adweek Podcasts. And if you have a question or suggestion for the show, send us an email at podcast@adweek.com.